Good evening, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. This is IMAX Sports with another football video, and today I'm going over my Week 9 power rankings for the 2024 NFL season. It's very odd that we're already halfway through the season. It feels like it just started, but yeah, we are halfway through. So I do power rankings on the channel every single week, so if you like this video, make sure to come back next week for some more. This was a pretty interesting week. Most of the games went how I expected, but some did not. Let's get right into it. First off, we got the dumpster fire. We have the Panthers at 32, the Dolphins at 31, the Titans at 30, Jets at 29, and the Saints at 28. The Dolphins are at 31, even though Tua has returned. That's because they still lost their game this week. If the Dolphins start winning games with Tua, then they're going to start rising in positions. This week, obviously, they're against the Cardinals, who are a decent team. But I'm not going to be elevating the Dolphins until they start winning games. They were down in the 30s. They're down around 30 the last couple weeks. They lost this week. They're not going to be elevated until I see them return to form fully. The Panthers are at 32. They lost once again, and they are on a massive losing streak once again. The Titans are at 30. The Titans have beaten the Dolphins this season, and they have been blown out quite a few times, but they've relatively been a little bit better than the Panthers and the Dolphins recently, but these are by far the three worst teams in the league. The Saints and the Jets are on the two longest losing streaks in the league. The Jets have now lost 5 in a row, I believe, and the Saints have lost 6 in a row. I could have that backwards. It could be the other way around. But the Jets lost this week to the Patriots after beating them earlier on in the season. Although Aaron Rodgers has retrieved Devontae Adams from the Packers, from the Raiders, really the connection has not been shown very much over the first couple of weeks. Garrett Wilson has been the main receiver the last couple of weeks, and this week Garrett Wilson played well and Devontae Adams played terribly. The Patriots defense was not very good. Neither was Aaron Rodgers, though. And the Jets offense looked inconsistent as it has previous weeks, and the Jets really just look terrible right now. As for the Saints have lost so many games in a row after starting 2-0. Spencer Rattler was taken out of the game, and overall the Saints offense couldn't get anything going this week. They only put up 8 points against the Chargers, who don't have the most phenomenal defense in the world, and it just was ultimately not a great performance, and the Saints just continue to lose games. Moving on to quarterback questions, we have the Patriots at 27, the Raiders at 26, the Jaguars at 25, the Giants at 24, and the Browns at 23. The Patriots were able to pull out a win this week against the Jets. It was the first time we beat the Jets this season, our second one of the year. Not the best game that we've ever played, but I was proud that Jacoby Brissett was able to take up the reins and finish the game when Drake May went out with a concussion. Hopefully Drake May is okay. Ultimately, if Drake May does come back, then I think the team will be better off. But I don't want him to come back too early and have any brain damage. The Raiders were able to put up a good fight against the Chiefs this week. Gardner Minshew seems to be the person they're going with over Aiden O'Connell, but neither quarterback has been phenomenal for the Raiders, and ultimately they haven't been able to win too many games other than that one fluke game where they beat the Ravens, and another one against, it was either the Browns or the Panthers, I forget which one. As for the Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence still don't look great. The connection between Trevor Lawrence and Brian Robinson Jr. is getting better and better every single week. Brian Robinson's having a phenomenal season for himself, but the Jaguars have not been able to pull out a win. They pulled out one win against the Patriots last week, but other than that, the Jaguars have been relatively quiet most of the season. Moving on to the Giants. The Giants did not play this week, so they didn't move any spots. And then the they're playing tomorrow night on Monday Night Football. And then the Browns are at 23. With the injury to Deshaun Watson and him being out for the season, and then the Browns winning this week with Jameis Winston against the Ravens, the Browns moved up significantly. I believe that the Browns are a much better team with Jameis Winston. I think that Jameis Winston still has a lot left in the tank. He's a pretty reliable quarterback, and the Browns last year with Dorian Thompson-Robinson had 10 wins. I think that they can be a decent team with Jameis Winston again, so I'm curious to see how they continue to improve with Jameis Winston under center. Moving on to hit or miss, we have the Bengals at 22, we have the Rams at 21, Seahawks at 20, and the Colts at 19. The Bengals lost this week. Wasn't a particularly well-played game by them. Joe Burrow obviously is still playing well, but the defense just was horrendous once again. The Bengals can't seem to get a couple. They got a couple good games in a row going, but now they are back down to 3-5, and they're trying to play catch-up once again. The Rams had a breakout week this week. They were able to beat the Vikings on Thursday Night Football. And part of that's because Cooper Kupp's back. Part of that's because Nakua's back. Everyone's healthy. The offense is clicking once again. And then the defense was able to do its job. With that being said, there were some controversial penalties and other things during the game. But the Rams did look better this week. They looked kind of similar to how they have looked previously. They might be able to start stringing some games together, but it's really too early to tell. Moving on, we have the Seahawks at 20 and the Colts at 19. The Seahawks lost this week in a demolition of a game. Seattle has not had a great season so far this year. They were able to win one somewhat decent game, but for the most part, they've had one of the easier schedules in the league, and they are currently 4-4. And the Colts have had a little bit of a tougher schedule, and they're also currently 4-4. For the most part, Geno Smith has had a mediocre season. The Seahawks defense has not been great, and they've kind of been blown out in a number of games recently, particularly when they play good teams. The Colts, on the other hand, have been competitive in every single game that they've played. They're also 4-4, but they've been competitive every single game, including this week when they lost to the Texans. They only lost by 3 points. Anthony Richardson did not have a fantastic performance, but most of that was due to his receivers being unable to catch the ball consistently. And overall, the Colts look like they do have some potential, just not for this season. Moving on to should be good, we have the Cowboys at 18, we have the Bears at 17, the 49ers at 16, and the Cardinals at 15. The Cowboys lost once again this week, bringing their record down to 3-4. The Cowboys, again, they should be good. They're going to be good by the end of the season. They just haven't figured it out yet. Dak Prescott is not having his greatest season ever, and the connection with CeeDee Lamb is not the same as it was last year. Rico Dowdle also has not been able to fill the same role that Tony Pollard was able to fill last year, and the offense just is not as explosive overall. The Bears are at 17. The Bears did lose another game. They had been winning a lot of games in a row, but they weren't against very good teams. This week they're against Washington, and they almost clawed back to get the victory, and then they let up a massive play at the end of the game. I just have not seen the Bears beat anybody decent at all whatsoever, and so because of that, I can't really have them in the top half if they haven't been able to beat a top half team yet. The 49ers beat the Cowboys this weekend. It was a solid game, but Brock Purdy is having a horrific season. Him and Patrick Mahomes both are playing horrendously. And the running back situation with Jordan Mason, he's been playing phenomenally, but it's not the same as having Christian McCaffrey. So, the 49ers just have not been anywhere near dominant at all. They have a 500 record, and their schedule hasn't even been the hardest schedule in the league. The Cardinals are at 15. They are also 500, but they have had the hardest schedule in the league, quite literally. They're 4-4, but it's probably one of the more impressive 4-4s you're going to see. This week, the easiest team they've played so far this season is the Dolphins, and they got the Dolphins with Tua, and they still pulled out the victory. So I love what the Cardinals look like. I love the connection between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray. I love what James Conner's doing in his 7th or 8th season. It's an impressive offense, and the defense has been able to hold teams enough to get out the wins. Moving on to could be good. We got the Chargers at 14. We got the Buccaneers at 13. The Broncos at 12, and the Steelers at 11. All these teams are rising every single week except for Tampa. Tampa's been falling. Tampa started off strong, but they are now down to 4-4. They have not had an impressive stretch. And then this week, they played a decent game, but it was not enough to win. Baker Mayfield is playing well, but he's throwing a lot of picks along with his touchdowns. And the loss of Chris Godwin definitely hurt them this week. And also the injury to Mike Evans. The offense there's not enough pieces for Baker Mayfield to play the way that he was played earlier on in the season. And they just kind of need to piece things back together before the playoffs start. I do believe that Actually, I don't think that they'll be making the playoffs at this point. I think that they need to start winning some more games in order to get into the playoff, in order to get back into the playoff conversation. Right now, it looks like the Falcons are going to be taking control of the division, but the Buccaneers could get back into it if they were able to win some divisional games. This week against the Falcons, they ran into Kirktober. The defense played horrendously. Kirk Cousins mopped the floor with them, and so I need to see Tampa return to form before I can put them back up in the top 10. The Chargers and the Broncos are both in interesting situations. The Chargers have not been playing well recently. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games. Their only win was to the Broncos, whereas the Broncos only losses to the Chargers, but they've won, I believe, 4 of their last 5 games. Bo Nix is getting better and better every week, whereas Justin Herbert does not look like himself. He looked like himself a little bit this week against the Raiders. Not against the Raiders. Forgot who the Chargers were against. But Justin Herbert looked a little bit more like himself this week. But it was not the most impressive victory ever. As for the Steelers at 11, the Steelers, they have not played yet this week. They're playing tomorrow night against the Giants. I do not expect them to lose. If they win, they won't be moving up any spots. If they do lose, they'll probably be moving down to 14. But with that being said, Russell Wilson played phenomenally last week. He looked like old Russell Wilson. He was gunslinging it. I think that Russell Wilson is going to be the perfect fit for this team. I think that the combination of Russell Wilson, Sean Payton, and even with the receivers they have with George Pickens and everything, I think that the Steelers are going to have a decent team. And I think that Russell Wilson could potentially take over this team and have a really strong end to the year, potentially making the playoffs as well. They're either 5-2 or they're 5-2 right now. If they win tomorrow, they'll be 6-2, and that's a pretty good start. They'll be number 1 in their division with the Ravens' loss this week. Moving on to the strong contenders, we got the Falcons at 10, we got the Eagles at 9, the Commanders at 8, the Bills at 7, and the Texans at 6. The Falcons have had a relatively up and down season, but they are 5-3. They have a couple strong divisional wins, including a win this week against Tampa, and Kirktober is officially over. So Kirk won 3 of his 4 games. He had 500 yards in the first game. This week he had almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Kirktober was a phenomenal occurrence, but it is unfortunately over, and we may be seeing the Falcons regress a little bit with the end of Kirktober. With that being said, I do think the Falcons are still going to be a strong team, but they are on a very strong run right now, and I do believe that will be coming to an end. But for right now, they deserve to be in the top 10. The Eagles are at number 9. I do believe the Eagles have potential to make it into the number 8, 7, or 6 spots over the next couple of weeks. With both A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith healthy, the Eagles' offense looks completely different. And Saquon Barkley has been on a different level this season. Saquon Barkley's almost been on Derrick Henry's level. Not quite, but almost. He's getting there. It's been a solid... the Eagles' offense is looking more and more like the Eagles' offense of the last couple of years every week. The defense still has a ways to go. It is not the same defense that we're accustomed to seeing from Nick Sirianni. But I do think that the Eagles will be cleaning up their game over the next few weeks. The Commanders had a nail-biter of a game against the Bears this week. They do improve to 6-2, and Jaden Daniels is back from injury, which is phenomenal for them. And there's nothing to criticize about the Commanders right now. They're winning games against strong teams, and they have one of the best offenses in the league, which is kind of surprising to say. But Washington has a top 3 offense right now. This week it wasn't on display, but it's still they got a lot of yards, right? They didn't score a lot, but they got down the field every single time. They just couldn't put it in the end zone. Moving on to the Bills. The Bills are also 6-2. This week they absolutely demolished. They took Seattle's soul. Josh Allen is once again in the MVP conversation. He is not having a prolific season, so I don't think that he's really competing for the MVP right now. I think that it's really it's really just between Lamar and Derrick Henry and Jared Goff. Like right now, it's a 3-horse race. I don't see anyone else other than Lamar, Derrick Henry, Jared Goff, and maybe Saquon that's in the conversation. It's Jared Goff and Lamar. I kind of need to see. I think that Josh Allen and C.J. Stroud and possibly Jaden Daniels could get into that conversation, but we need to see a little bit more. We need to see them have some phenomenal games and increase their efficiency, because the efficiency is really what's separating Goff and Lamar from the rest of the pack. Both of them have been incredible. Moving on to Houston, the Houston Texans are at number 6. Houston had a very mellow game this week against the Colts. Defense played well, offense played well. They won by 3. It was just a good game overall. The injury of Nico Collins has not been too detrimental for the Texans. I do expect that the Texans will get better once Nico Collins is back. But still, they played well. They're 6-2, and they've only lost to very strong teams. Finally, we got the NFL's elite. The Ravens are still at number 5. The Vikings are at 4. The Packers are at 3. The Chiefs are at 2, and the Lions are at 1. The Ravens didn't have any film on Jameis Winston going into this week. It was a tough performance for the defense, but I really think that the main reason why they didn't win was because they just didn't control the game on the ground. Once they got a good, strong lead in the first quarter, running it with Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry had, 30-something yards in the first quarter. Second quarter comes along, they just shut down the run game. They try passing on every single down, and it doesn't work, right? And they didn't have that same balance that they've had so far this season. With that being said, I think that the Ravens just didn't have their best performance this week. I do think that they're a top 5 team. They're 5-3, which they're only a game behind the teams just below them. So I do think that it's a fair spot, but not a good week for the Ravens. Number 4, we have the Vikings. The Vikings had a relatively good game, but they were not able to come up with the victory. Again, they were against the Rams. The Rams got a lot of receivers back, so they didn't have a lot of film on them either. This is their second loss in a row. If the Vikings lose next week, they are going to be close to the bottom of the top 10. But they're still 6-2. They still had a very strong start to the season. I'm not ready to give up on Sam Darnold yet, but yeah, they're not looking great. The Packers are number 3. The Packers have had a phenomenal run with Jordan Love. Jordan Love is looking like prime Brett Favre right now. He is probably one of the only quarterbacks over the last 15 years that's in the MVP conversation while leading the league in interceptions. The Packers' only losses were very early on in the year. One of them was to the Vikings. One of them was to the Eagles. And now that Jordan Love has gotten into, and the Vikings loss was once Jordan Love came back from injury. Now that he is fully healthy again, he's back in his stride. The Packers are unstoppable. They have one of the best offenses in the league, and they just really need their defense to step it up in order for them to win games. As for the Chiefs and the Lions, the Chiefs did not play this week, and so they are 7-0. They've had a pretty tough schedule, but Patrick Mahomes is not playing well. Patrick Mahomes has more picks than touchdowns, and he's playing atrociously. The defense is the only reason why they're winning games. The Lions have claimed the number 1 spot. The Chiefs are no longer in the number 1 spot just because the Lions are so much more well-rounded. Jared Goff is an MVP candidate. He arguably is the number 1 MVP choice right now because between the record and the efficiency, Jared Goff he only had 85 yards today, but he had 3 touchdowns on 15 attempts. And he has somewhere around an 140 passer rating over the last 4 or 5 weeks combined. He is on a different level currently, and I'm excited to see where this goes. So, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And I'll see everyone all in the next one.